6 degrees of separation is a decades-old concept, stating that any person on Earth can be connected to any other person on Earth in only 6 steps, or fewer. Is this concept still valid? Let's have a look. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 18, Chapter 12.
6
degrees
of
separation.
I was surprised to learn that the hypothesis of 6 degrees of separation is in fact almost 100 years old. The idea's origin is often traced back to Hungarian author and poet Fergus Corinthi, who in 1929 published a short story called Chains. In this story, a man offers a bet that any chosen person could be connected to another random chosen person by only 5 acquaintances. 5? This was 1929. What an outrageous claim to make, considering the massive world population of over 1.5 billion people. Today, it's a world of 8 billion inhabitants. So does that make the 6 degrees notion more likely or less likely? Well, that part is interesting, and I'll get to that shortly. But it was 1929 that the idea of minimal degrees of separation among the world population was first introduced. It was not a particularly popular topic of discussion. If you remember history, 1930 and on, the Depression, the drought, hard times, people tended to have more urgent conversations about food and shelter. Debates on this separation theory were mostly confined to the pipe smoke-filled offices of professors and other intellectuals. Fast forward to the 1960s, when we were more predisposed to the far out and the groovy. A social psychologist named Stanley Milgram performed the small world experiment to test the 6 degrees idea. Small world, right? Of course. So often we'll meet a stranger at a party or somewhere and find out that we have a mutual friend. Oh, what a small world, we often say. As Stephen Wright points out in his act, it is a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it. Anyway, back to the professor. In his experiment, participants were asked to send a package to a specific person in another city, but not directly to that person, instead by only forwarding the package to an acquaintance they knew on a first-name basis. Milgram reported that the packages reached their destination in an average of 6 steps. There have been many critics of this study because of, A, flawed methodology, i.e. most of the people to whom the packages were to be sent were in Boston, and most of them were stockbrokers, thereby making it more likely that people in the same city, in the same profession, would already know each other. They'd be already connected. And B, only about 30% of the packages reached their destination. So, 6 steps when it worked. But it was much too low a sample size to claim any hard evidence. Milgram did coin the phrase 6 degrees of separation, so we did get that out of it. Either way, the 6 degrees of separation notion started to become more known. Interestingly, about a decade earlier, there was an eccentric but genius mathematician named Paul Erdos. He was studying connections of people and networks. 1950s, so there wasn't a lot of data available. But just like the pure laws of physics,
I can't change the laws of physics.
If you connect several people into a network, that's one thing. But if you begin connecting the networks to each other, that just increases the likelihood of more people being connected. This is really what the concept of networking is all about. In the late 1980s, writer John Guare wrote a play called 6 Degrees of Separation. It was based on a true story of a young man who pretended to be the son of actor Sidney Poitier in order to gain access to wealthy New York high society. It ran on Broadway for many years. By 1993, there was a film adaptation of the play. It was released at theaters. It starred Donald Sutherland and Will Smith. It was well received. The film was also a bit of a test to see if that fresh Prince of Bel-Air could in fact be a movie star.
I believe the imagination is the passport that we create
to help take us into the real world. I believe the imagination is merely another phrase for what is most uniquely us. The imagination, that's God's gift to make the act of self-examination bearable.
The play and the movie contained many social commentaries, but underlying was the idea that most of the people in the world were connected to other people, unless, of course, you are born as a minority or into poverty. Nevertheless, by the mid-1990s, we were more aware of this little idea, 6 degrees of separation. It's a popular party game. It was also the very beginning of the internet and our massive connectivity. Speaking of party games, due to the success of the movie and the buzz it created, in 1994 some college kids came up with this idea, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. This exercise involved connecting any actor to Kevin Bacon in 6 or fewer movie titles where an actor would have co-starred with Kevin Bacon. Bacon was chosen not only for the number of movies he had made, but for the great variety of films he was in, from Hollywood blockbusters to the smaller indie ventures. Oddly, actors like Harvey Keitel, Eric Roberts, and Dennis Hopper would have more connections than Kevin Bacon. The college kids, though, had perceived that Bacon was the most connected, and they just read an article in a showbiz magazine where Bacon claimed that he had worked with almost everyone in Hollywood. And you know, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon just sounds so much better than 6 degrees of Harvey Keitel. No offense, Harvey. Side note, initially Bacon disliked the game because he thought it was ridiculing him, but eventually he came to embrace it.
The 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. In case you haven't heard of this game, the idea is that any actor alive or dead can be connected to me through our work in 6 steps or less. And I'm going to give you an example that I had to actually go to the Oracle of Bacon website to find, because I'm good at a couple things, but playing this game is not one of them. I randomly picked Rudolph Valentino. Rudolph Valentino in 1922 was in Beyond the Rocks. I'm sure we all remember that one. He was in it with Gertrude Astor, who did Daddy Longlegs in 1955 with James Cromwell, who was in Beyond All Boundaries in 2009 with me. That gives Rudolph Valentino a Bacon number of 3.
In the day, 2 sociologists got very interested in this game and gained access to all of the Bacon database. What they found was that this was a small world network. In other words, the game involved actors in one industry. More on that later. You may not know that this concept was also turned into a couple of game shows, neither of which really lasted. There was a British game show in 2015 called 6 Degrees of Separation, and earlier a Swedish game show called Around the World in 6 Steps. So, in 1929, when Corinthy first proposed his theory, it seemed outlandish, perhaps impossible, that among this 1.5 billion people, the connecting degrees would be so few. What about now? What about 8 billion people? Simply put, more people also means more possible connections. It's only logical, Captain.
I can't change the laws of physics.
To illustrate, any one of us would have 50 people we know personally. Friends, relatives, co-workers, social connections, former co-workers and connections. 50, easily. And you know what? Let's even go lower, 45. Because you'll see that for the math, 45 actually works a lot better. So you have these 45 friends, and each one of those also has 45 friends, none of which you know. And each one of those other 45 also each has 45 friends, and each of them have 45 in only 6 steps. How many people is that? Well, it's 45 to the 6th power, or 8.3 billion people, which is the approximate entire population of planet Earth. So yeah, more people. 6 degrees idea works even better. And there is the question of connectivity. Has the internet and social media changed the 6 degrees of separation notion? Well, yes. Now first, I guess you'd have to define how well you know someone to whom you are connected on social. Like if you follow Taylor Swift on Instagram, it doesn't mean you know her. But if you're like me, you probably have online friends that you've never met in person. But you know each other. You know a little bit about each other. You comment on each other's posts, maybe even PM each other once in a while. So I would say, yes, you know that person even though you've never met. You are connected. They're an acquaintance. It's like a phone friend or a pen pal back in the day before all of this happened. They are a friend and acquaintance, an intermediary. They are a degree. Studies that used the large-scale online data, information that just wouldn't have been available to a Corinthi or a Milgram, show that the average number of degrees it now takes to connect to another person in the world is down to 3 or 4. But even if you had a rule in this game that says no online allowed, you could still probably do it in 6 or less. The math alone proves it, right? 45 to the 6th power equals the population of Earth. Essentially, our mass electronic connectivity has not fundamentally changed the small world concept. It's actually helped make it an even smaller world. Suddenly we have at our disposal the tools to bridge many gaps, the degrees. If you are playing 6 Degrees of Separation as just a party game, you can include or exclude online acquaintances. There's really no rules. Well, there is this. You and the person you are trying to connect to are not considered degrees. Only the people in between, the intermediaries, are considered degrees of separation. For example, I don't know about now, but a few years ago, I was connected to the President of the United States by only 3 degrees. I've got a friend whose brother became a big executive in the U.S. As his sphere of influence increased, he became good friends with his local senator. The senator was a powerful man who was a friend and advisor to the president. My friend, his brother, the senator. That's 3 degrees. I know my member of parliament relatively well. He knows the Prime Minister of Canada. So I'm 1 degree from the Prime Minister, which means I'm 2 degrees from the former Prime Minister, which means I'm 3 degrees away from Katy Perry. Therefore, 4 degrees from Orlando Bloom. And hey, who's he dating now? Because then well, you get how it works. The fun part is trying to discern how you would be connected to a celebrity, a Leonardo DiCaprio, a Billie Eilish. But you have to wonder, could a postal carrier in Albuquerque be 6 degrees away from a barista in Kuala Lumpur? According to science, yes. And this is where the small world idea comes in. The example earlier of Kevin Bacon, an actor in the film industry predominantly centered in Hollywood. That is just one small world, as was Milgram's flawed study, where he used too many stockbrokers and all from Boston. But if Kevin Bacon gets to know a Bostonian stockbroker, or that stockbroker is in a movie with Harvey Keitel, well, the small worlds collide.
You couldn't figure out the world's theory for yourself? It's just common sense. Anybody knows you gotta keep your worlds apart.
Yeah, I guess I slipped up.
He knows the world's theory.
What, is it blowing up?
Okay, more like intersect, which is what you want. You see, the importance of this kind of data and these kinds of studies is not 6 degrees of separation. It's almost like it's 6 degrees of separation, but in reverse. What do I mean by that? Well, 6 degrees of separation is something we do for our amusement. But we are trying to create a connection between 2 random people. But what the connections and the clusters and the small worlds and networks actually tell us is the importance of stepping outside of our own tiny circle. Did you know that most people who get recommended for a job do so not from a close friend, but from a casual acquaintance? Think about it. A group of close friends all would have the same information. It is usually a casual acquaintance that says, hey, I hear they have an opening over at Jordan's. You should really give them a call. It only works if at least one person steps outside of their small world to get to know someone else in this other world. You know, kind of expand the circle. It's not that the small worlds get bigger. It's just now that there's a connection between them. Remember 45 to the 6th power. It's like one of your 45 gets to know one of somebody else's 45. You can call that networking, if you like, but it not only connects people, it connects worlds. And this is why mass worldwide connectivity has dropped our 6 degrees number down to 5 and 4, and in the future, even less. Our job is not to count the degrees of separation as a game play or whatever, albeit that's fun to do, but to actively try and reduce the number of degrees. That's what connectivity gave us. It's a gift. We just haven't always used it properly to date. At the risk of sounding a little preachy, it is the research of social psychologists and mathematicians into network and degrees of separation that highlights the importance of all of us connecting to each other. Connections that hopefully over time can become more real and meaningful. Connections that can lead to understanding and empathy. I'm not saying that's happening right now. I'm saying that the potential is there. By the way, I just figured out that I am connected to the current president of the United States in only 3 degrees. I think I've mentioned this before, but many years ago I did stand-up comedy at a club the same time that Jim Carrey was starting out. So I kind of know Jim Carrey. I'm not name-dropping. I describe it this way. We're not close friends. We didn't stay in touch. I don't have his phone number. I no longer know anyone that might have his phone number. But I always say if I bumped into him on the street somewhere and I went, "Hey, Jim, it's Larry Fedoruk. Remember years ago, Yuck Yucks?" He would probably go, "Oh yeah, Larry." He would never think of my name on his own. I'm sure he hasn't thought of it once since he moved to Hollywood, but I think he'd remember me on the street. So in that way, let's say I know Jim Carrey. Carrey's Grinch movie was directed by Ron Howard, who also did a movie based on J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy. He knows J.D. Vance. J.D. is vice president to Donald Trump. Carrey, Howard, Vance, 3 degrees to Donald Trump. Ick. Come to think of it, I do know somebody who's got Jim Carrey's phone number, not that they'd give it to me. So even if you say, hey, you don't know Jim, I know somebody who knows Jim, who knows Ron Howard, who knows J.D. Vance, who knows Donald Trump. So that's just adding a degree. Same with you. You may not know Jim Carrey, but you may know someone who went to school with Jim Carrey, which puts you in the same number of degrees, which puts you well within the 6 degrees to Donald Trump. Me, I'm sticking with my 3. Again, ick. Which, by the way, means I guess I'm 4 degrees to Vladimir Putin. Double ick. I'm 4 degrees to Jeffrey Epstein. Triple ick. Well, I guess once Trump enters the game, there will be a lot of icks to go around. Let's end on 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon as an example of how connections work for good. As mentioned earlier, Bacon balked at this viral game, thinking it was a big joke at his expense. Eventually, he warmed to it.
No Oscars, but at least he has a game named after him.
Then 9/11 happened. Around that time, Bacon had also lost some people close to him in unrelated tragedies. As he tells the story, one day he's staring in the fridge at a jar of Paul Newman spaghetti sauce. And he's thinking, wow, Paul Newman, what a great actor. But look what he did. He took his love of salad dressing and tomato sauce and turned it into a multi-million-dollar charity juggernaut. Bacon began to think, how can we do more? How can I do more? He thought, well, nothing is really branded around me. Well, wait, no. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. He went on to found 6degrees.org. Short version, it uses the power of connection, person to person, to raise money for needy charities. It's been operating for years. As much as we like the alliterative 6 degrees of separation as a catchphrase, it's really not about the separation. It's about how it only takes a few tiny steps to connect to the rest of the world.
Later That Same Life is written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. Larry Fedoruk, 37 at gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.